Aloha and welcome to Being Aware. I'm your host, KG Stiles. On Being Aware, we explore what it is to be aware in all areas of your life, whether at home, work, business, and money, relationships, with your health, your social and cultural identity. The intention of being aware is to awaken you to the connectedness of all life. You're invited to deepen your own individual awareness and begin to connect the dots to see the patterns and cycles underlying and unifying all of your life experience. You'll hear from teachers, leaders, and experts about the awakening consciousness in their particular field of interest to get a pulse on the current trends and evolutionary impulses unfolding now. We're exploring the ancient and traditional ways of growing your awareness, including meditation, self-inquiry, and astrology, as well as more modern methods such as psychotherapy, neuroscience, technology, and much more. Nothing will be off limits. Being aware opens your heart and mind and expands your awareness so you can step into the awakening consciousness occurring now with power and confidence. You'll be, as Gandhi said, the change you wish to see in the world. So please subscribe so you never miss a show and get a free download of my book, Feel Powerful, free as a gift when you sign up. There's a link here for you on screen. So today I'm excited to be speaking with Faye Cossar, an astrology business consultant and a counseling astrologer and therapist who uses past life regression in her work. Faye has a master's in cultural astronomy and astrology from Bath Spa University in the UK. Originally from New Zealand, Faye is a well-known speaker at schools and conferences around the world and author of Using Astrology to Create a Vocational Profile, Finding the Right Career Direction. Faye is the head of the Amsterdam School of Astrology in her adopted home of Holland. Welcome to the show, Faye. It's a pleasure having you with us.
Oh, thank you very much, and it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So it's lovely to have you here. So we are on the threshold of a brand new calendar year. Today we're going to chat about how you use business astrology to help people and give a little bit of heads up about what's happening in the business world in 2016. Are you ready?
Sure, yeah.
Before we begin, I'm sure everyone would love to know a bit more about you and how you discovered astrology and what you love most about this tool for awakening and awareness.
Oh, well, a long time ago, I went, in my early 20s, I think, I went to an astrologer when I was still living in New Zealand, long time ago. And I was always kind of interested in astrology, you know, just the things you saw in magazines. And I thought, oh, well, it's probably time I went to a proper one. And looking back, he was probably somebody that was just beginning. So it was, looking back at it now, it was like pretty basic. But I was really amazed at what he could say, and I got absolutely fascinated by it. So that's really what started me off. And plus I'd been reading some of the other things and, you know, and just in general things. So I like the idea that you could kind of have a framework for something, or that, you know, you could look at people and find out a bit more about them. I've always been fascinated by people. So I think that was really my start way back then.
So what do you think led to your success and eventually becoming a full-time vocational business astrologer?
Well, I have a background in, I think what a lot of astrologers don't have is a background in business. So I worked for a long time in IT, and my background's in programming and actually selling computers and marketing. And then when I came to Holland, I was head of a training organisation that sold people actually for training for other businesses. So I had to do a lot of marketing. So I had quite a good mix of business knowledge, having done lots of different things, and I continued being curious with people. And my father was also very interested in psychology when I was young, so he certainly had a big influence on my view of how I looked at life and how I looked at people. So, and I don't know, that success is I think my business astrology just came from being different and having both backgrounds and having done staff development and managing, and plus doing quite a lot of astrology. And my astrology was just hard work really, and daring to go for it, and then doing therapy courses. So I'm a trained therapist as well. So I've done 5 years therapy training as well. So I think that makes me quite a good all-rounder and capable of looking at people, but also having the business background that mixes it together. So it makes me fairly practical, I think, in terms of what the real world needs.
Yes, I like it when things are very practical. They serve a practical purpose. Yeah. So do you have a favorite quote by chance?
I don't believe in astrology. That's what I use a lot.
I love it. And explain what that means.
Well, I take that, I think it's the same as saying, to me, it's the same as saying, do you believe in biology or do you believe in geology? You know, it's a kind of meaningless statement. And when people say that, they actually mean something else. They actually mean something like, do you believe in fate or do you believe that the future's set? Or, you know, they actually mean something when they ask me. Quite a few people ask me that, and I always say no. Because I think, you know, it's not a religion or a belief system to me. It's what I call astrology is a model. Astrology is the study of something. It's the study, you know, theology is the study of something to me. But to me, astrology is a model for how the world works. So it's a framework, you know, for me of a focus for look, like anything else is. The horoscope for me is a focus for actually getting in touch with a business or a person or a cat or a dog or whatever it happens to be looking at. So to me, it's more like a model of the universe. So it can never be a belief system for me. That's too scary.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Perfect. So why do people seek out your business astrology counseling, Faye?
Most people that I have had some bigger clients, but the most people I have are what we call the people who work for themselves are my biggest group of people, that are people who are starting up like astrologers or like more like artists or you know, one-man band type people that are doing their own thing and really want some kind of sounding board sometimes. And what I'm getting known for now, because I started another group of people, it's not really a company, but it's a group of 4 of us. I started to do branding and logo development and things like that. So together we're much stronger than we are separately. We're all small people. So I do what I call a branding profile. And then I've got a designer and a website builder and a text writer, and we work together. And we've had, for these small businesses, we do a whole kind of branding, company style, company logos, those sorts of things. But I use the chart, and it's very quick, and it's more and more people are coming just for that branding profile. So I can give them what color is your website, could your website be? Discussion. I'm always a discussion astrologer. I'm not somebody who says you should do this, you know, just reading your chart, then your logo should be blue. But more of a discussion about what are the goals of the company, what's your reputation, what would you like to do? And I just use very simple astrology to do that, but it's very, very powerful. So we've had some wonderful feedback from using that, and my designer loves it because she's starting to learn about the signs now. So together we have a really fun brainstorming where we've come up with some absolutely brilliant websites.
Yeah, it's collaboration.
Yeah, it's really powerful, that. Yeah, and the chart is really powerful. And the other things people come from for business are things like timing, you know, when to launch a new product, what new products. I'm not a financial astrologer, so my aim in business is to be like I am with people, to be really who you are as a company. So the thought behind that is that companies start at a particular time for a particular reason. You know, the starter had a particular dream. He had a particular, or she had a particular thing that they wanted to do. So a lot of people come to me to talk about, I do quite a few combinations with people starting for themselves. So for instance, if you were wanting to brand this channel or something, and I knew what was in your heart and your mind, then we could have a good discussion on, okay, maybe you should have this as your logo, this is your slogan, or, you know, those sorts of things. So it gives people a lot more insight and a lot more food for thinking about what they really want to do with themselves, but also with their company. So to me, it's a similar sort of process. So in a company chart, you can see what should your products be, what do you love doing, you know, I don't know what your strengths and weaknesses maybe are, what kind of environment you should work in, who's a good, anything really, who's good to merge with, you know, who are your clients, who are your customers. Recently I've had a while back now, but I've got one of my clients is a furniture designer, and one of the things we went through is all their current clients. We looked at what they thought, what they might we might be able to pitch to them as clients. So, you know, what might they like as clients? So would they like a bathroom design or a you know, a sitting room design, or a chair, or a fountain, or I don't know, whatever. So, and that was really fun to do, and they realised that what they'd already sold was fitted quite well with that. So it's just a confirmation often, you know, like it is with clients.
What's the greatest challenge that your clients come to you with when they consult with you?
Business clients, you mean? Business?
Yes.
Business clients often come because they're either not doing very well, or I'm trying to think of the bigger ones. Yeah, sometimes they just want information, like for timing. Like, I'm setting up a new company. When should I do that? Is that a good time to do that? Or I'm setting up a new branch. But the biggest challenge is when companies are failing, I think, when they're not doing very well. And people often want help with the decision with, do I go on or do I not? You know, am I on the right direction or not? They really want a sort of sounding board often, I find. And what's good about business astrology is you're looking at something from a whole other independent viewpoint. You've got a whole other way of looking at something that they've never really thought of. So you can ask quite interesting questions that they've never thought about.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get somebody at a top level who's really is involved in the direction of the company, then they find it really useful, because some of the things they've just never really thought about.
Yeah, really opens their awareness about the things to connect in with some of the elements that are at work that maybe they weren't aware about, that are important.
Yeah, what I find with some companies is that they've kind of lost the plot. You know, one of the examples I often give is KLM, who I did some work for when I was doing some research when I was doing my master's. But they, for instance, if you're looking at the astrology, they're Libra, so they always were looking for a partner as a company. They finally found one in Air France. But they also have Leo quite strongly in their chart, Leo and Aries, fiery things. And they started off, or they're called, the K from KLM means Royal Dutch Airlines. So it goes with the sign of Leo. And they when they went into the kind of cheap, you know, like EasyJets and the budget airlines, that doesn't really suit them. So they were trying to compete in something that doesn't really fit with their DNA, you know what I mean? So that sort of discussion is really interesting. Is this what you're really doing, or are you copying somebody else? And that's the same for people. You know, it's about being authentic for me. And it helps them get back to why the company was started in the first place. And that really matters. Branders actually say that as well. Why did you ever start the company? Branders say that. So that's a really interesting discussion, and a big challenge sometimes, because usually they come when companies are having trouble. They're worried about something, or they've got management. I've had one where the management there was 3 in the management team, and 2 of them were fighting. You know, so you can do sort of relationship astrology and things like that as well for a company. You can do lots of things.
Yes.
But
so what was your greatest aha moment for growing your awareness when you were using astrology with in your own practice?
In my personal life?
Yeah, just with using astrology with your clients. And did you have sort of an aha moment, or maybe you've had a number of aha moments? So
I think I have many ones all the time with clients when I suddenly see how the chart works, because I don't do that much preparation, but because I've been an astrologer for a long time, I know the archetype. So I'm a dialogue person. So I would ask, my horoscope is my kind of intake formula, so I know what to ask. So if I say, how do I, and I help with the dialogue. So there's a kind of aha moment for me with every client where I think, that's how that works. So and then I'm in the chart, you know, then I'm getting into the chart and I can do that. Just had a good example of that today, which was an interesting assignment I had today, but it was the same. For myself, it's I think when I started going for myself for astrology, when I started doing astrology properly in London, when I lived in London, it was just mind-blowing. My whole life changed when I started studying it properly, because I realised it worked. You know, so my aha moment was, this is an absolutely amazing piece of knowledge. And my aha moment was, my God, this is so powerful and it works. So I was absolutely, what's the word? You know, I caught astrology, if you like, when I first started studying it properly. So I think that was my personal biggest aha moment, was that I could have gone to a lesson every night. I just, you know, it was just so resonated with me that I thought, wow, I can do so much with this.
Yes, I study astrology every day. I wouldn't be without it.
Yeah.
And it's how I navigate through my life.
Yeah, that's right. It helps
it
me.
gives me insights, and it just puts
Absolutely.
me, I always tune in first thing in the morning. I love it when I can see the sky.
Yeah.
And, you know, this past, when you were here in Ashland, and we got to go out and view the heavens.
You're so lucky. When I was there, I thought, oh God, it's so beautiful. Yeah, you can't see the sky at all here.
Yeah. So it's just been fantastic. We've had the Jupiter and Mars and Venus, and so, and
I
you
love
can see Regulus, I mean, all
Ashland.
those. Yeah. I'm so glad I got to meet you when you were here.
Yeah, it was lovely meeting you at dinner. Yeah, but
so,
no, I think, you know, I think I've used it a lot when you're struggling with something. It's an absolutely brilliant tool to think, is this me, or is it something, and what is it that I need to learn, and what is going on here really? You know, I think that's been absolutely brilliant as a life tool. Yeah, but you can help people use it the same way, I think, for business as well.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
So has astrology helped you through any tough patches or any difficulties in your own life?
Yeah, I think it does with everybody. I mean, I've had relationships. I've been married and I've been divorced, and you know, like everybody, I've had ups and downs. So, yeah, to get some sort of insight into how and why and what's happening with that. Yes, I've certainly used it for that on a personal level with relationships, but also with looking at, like, I use it all the time for if I'm doing a lecture or a workshop. For instance, I'm going to Ireland next year, and we use the chart to think up a title and to think up what would work on that day. And, you know, I'm doing another one soon, which is in Scorpio time. So we're talking about power and powerlessness, you know. So I'm using it that way for insight into really, I'm looking forward into how can I use the moment, how can I use the energy of the moment to do whatever. So I'm like that with clients as well.
Yes.
So I don't think it's set. I think what we decide. But for me, it's about co-creating with the planets.
Yes, and I think astrology is a great tool for.
Brilliant for that, yeah.
You know, yes. So, what's your vision for the world as an astrologer, Faye?
Oh, that's one of those big questions, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. I mean, my mission in life is to get astrologers more professional in a way, and to get the world more conscious of what could be done. So. What is going to happen, I don't know. You know, I mean, I think astrology is a great tool for developing consciousness, and I hope we can do that. I hope we can, as astrologers, I hope we can offer what we know to help do that, I suppose.
Do you see interest growing for astrology?
I think people have always been fascinated by it, but I think the biggest problem we have is a PR problem, really, with astrology. People think that we're just about telling the future. You know, hence the question, do you believe in astrology? I think because people have a certain idea about, you know, that if you go to an astrologer, they're going to tell you what your future is. You know,
like fortune telling.
Yeah, we're still against science and, you know, all of that. And I think I think astrologers are trying to, we'll always be on the outside, I think that's what makes us special, because we can look at something a different way. But there's no reason why we can't do good scientific research, you know. And I don't mean how many Geminis do X, Y. I mean proper, what I would go with was narrative research. So doing what we actually do. So working with the archetypes, looking at how people use them, and how can we develop the archetypes. For instance, one of the lectures I did when I was in the US, and one I've just done in the UK, is I asked the question: Are the astrological archetypes, like the signs and the planets, the archetypes, are they fixed or not? Do they change over time? And my version is that I'm with Rupert Sheldrake, who's the biologist, that says nature isn't fixed, that nature has habits. He says nature has habits. And I think the archetypes have habits, you know, but they're like fields that we all add into, and we can change them. Mm-hmm. So, you know, my view is if we look at, say what we've got now, say that Neptune and Pisces, right? Good thing to look at for now and in the coming year, is what we need to learn is how are we doing the Neptune archetype, right? So especially since it's in Pisces, it's really strong. So what you see is a lot of the pain of Neptune at the moment. You see a lot of the refugees and a lot of the drownings. You know, Pisces is all about water, about overgoing borders and boundaries and all of that. And so what are we learning with that, and what are we supposed to do with that as a mundane astrologer? You know, I think what we're learning actually to raise the consciousness level is how do we do compassion? How do we become one whole world, Pisces? A global, you know, one whole thing, and how do we actually do compassion without it being a problem for us? So I think the kids of these days, my view on this is the children these days are trying to help us do Neptune in a positive way. So Neptune rules things like drugs and attention deficit and, you know, and dementia and all these sort of things, which are really prevalent. And we don't know how to do that. So I think our lesson is to not give the children Ritalin and drugs and, you know, try and fit them into our model of the universe, but to try and see what they're really good at. Why are they so sensitive? Why have they all got asthma? Why have they all got, you know, allergies to everything? It's because they're probably telepathic, or they're developing a new skill or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's about, for me, astrology is about, because we know that archetype, is really about trying to help people say that, okay, this can also be positive. What can we learn from this? So that's why it's very difficult to have a prediction, because I think when enough people can do it well, Neptune, then we've got a tipping point, I think.
Yes, the collective.
The collective thing, yeah. And with Neptune, because it's a fairly new planet, we're not there yet. Pluto even more so, because it's only from 1930. Saturn we can do relatively well, I think, because it's so old. And Uranus we're getting better at, I think, because it's our generation did Uranus. You know, we learned how to be rebellious and stick up for ourselves and be individuals. We went a bit far maybe, but the kids these days don't have a problem with that so much. You know, they can do a more positive Uranus. They're very innovative.
Yeah, and the Pisces rules the drug industry, I think. Yeah. And then we have Jupiter opposite this year. Yeah,
exactly. So
there's this whole thing with holism and nature there, like, opposite Pisces. So there's a whole dynamic going on with that. Yeah.
And the Jupiter and Virgo, there is just an overdose of information everywhere. You know, there's just everything coming at you with the Virgo being information.
It's been extreme.
It's been really extreme, and it's making the Pisces, the refugee crisis. It's so in our face now that we really have to learn how to deal with it. We can't avoid it anymore. You know, especially with Jupiter, we just can't avoid it.
Yeah, and then you bring in old Saturn there, coming up to square.
Well, that could see, the potential of that is really helpful, I think.
Yes, so I agree. It's like opening a door.
Yeah, but for businesses, if you put those two together, that can be grounding some really great vision. You know, if you use it well, it can be, the Neptune is kind of you can't quite get hold of it, but it's absolutely a brilliant concept. You know, Neptune's a lot about concepts, I think, and the Saturn can ground it.
Yes, so that's why I say, you know, you can open that. It's kind of like something that's been locked. You know, the Saturn, it can be very fixed and locked and set. You know, and but the Neptune has the effect of opening that. You know, opening what's been locked up, and you know, there's all this. So
it dissolves it in a way, doesn't it?
Yes, but I like squares. I think squares help you.
You have to do something with squares.
Yes, you have to do it. You have to do the square. You can't get around the square.
No, and like we have to as well. As human beings, we all have to do that square, you know.
Yes.
But we all have to do, you know, I'm always writing about how that can be used positively. And the more people that can do it positively, the more astrologers stop scaring people and say, oh, God, Pluto, that's really, then the better we
Yes. I'm one of those positive astrologers. It's energy. You know, how do you work with it in a conscious way to affect change? Because everything's in change and flux and movement all the time. And the astrology chart just gives you the perfect maps for how it all lays out, the timing of it, the patterns, everything's just laid out there for you.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, as a collective as well, we really have to stop being scared of things. I think as astrologers, stop saying, "Oh, you've got a Pluto transit coming up. Oh, that's going to be really tough." That to me, that's not helpful. To anybody, for a company, for a person, for anything, it's not helpful.
I agree. I hear the best of astrologers who are very, they have a very positive intent, and they still come out with, watch out for this, or it triggers people. It triggers their fear. And I think right now we've been so triggered time and again by some of the constellations, that square between Uranus and Pluto. I think that has deeply triggered us. I mean, some of those cross quarter points got really activated.
And of course it's heavy energy, but the more we can, the more people can use that in a good way. But it's been everything, and of course it's a tough aspect. But it brings, and the problem is partly the media as well, because you only hear the really negative things. There's been some brilliant things happen under Pluto Uranus as well, square. There's been some fantastically brilliant innovations of things. And we don't hear so many of those.
Yeah, and breakthroughs.
Absolute major life-changing breakthroughs for people as well, and on a world scale and also individually. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it's a potential to be really life-changing, and innovative as well.
Yes. So, what are your top, I think you've touched on this, but what are your top 3 values when you are interpreting, when you're working, when you're collaborating with a client with their astrology chart?
I'm a real encourager. I think everybody uses the word coach, so I hate the word coach. But I think if you think about what coaches do in terms of like football coaches, they bring out a good coach sees what someone can do and brings out the talents of someone. And I really try and see that. So I see myself as an encourager of what people can have, and I try and encourage them to go for who they are. So nothing is weird for me. I try and do my own work, so I'm not giving advice from what I think about it. And I think that's very helpful for people if you're not going to be judged. So one of my top ones is see the person for who they really are, and all the pain that they have and all the good things that they have, and try and help them to be the best of who they are, really, in a way. So I suppose that's a value, and being honest with people and doing my own work is another one. It's another value that I think all astrologers should have, and I think a lot of them haven't. So
we have a lot in common, where we're coming from and doing this work. So what's your greatest inspiration as an astrologer, Faye?
I think I've mentioned him already in a way. I mean, there's lots of people that have inspired me. My father had a lot to do with why I started, because he was a very interesting person in terms of his search for meaning and things in life. That he was doing actually what he was doing, although he didn't know it was past life regression when I was a child. And he was doing self-hypnosis and getting into things where he was scaring people. So, but he was, I've got that from him, that sort of searching for meaning and searching for life. But one of my sort of heroes, if you could call it that, one of the things I aspire to, if you like, is somebody I've already mentioned, which I say this often. But Rupert Sheldrake he's a biologist, and he gets a lot of flack. He gets a lot of disagreement from other scientists, and he gets a lot of rubbish, and he gets a lot of like we do, as if he's a witch, or as if he's the sort of crap we get online. Honestly, he gets a lot of that, people that don't want to read. But he's a really good scientist, and he does the work, he does proper experiments, he dares to speak out, he dares to take people on, and he's very funny, and those are the things I love. I love his humor. I love the fact that he takes on people that have a go at him for saying he's not doing proper research, but he really does the work. And I think as astrologers we can aspire to that. We should do more work. We should do more better research. Our research is abysmal mostly. There's not enough good astrological research being done, and it's also mostly the research has been done to fit in with a scientific protocol, which doesn't actually test what we do. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never had an assignment to where someone gave me 10 horoscopes and I had to guess who was who. that is just not what we do. And that's some of the research that's been done is matching, profiles, but that's just meaningless as far as I'm concerned. But investigating, doing narrative research and investigating, taking people that have all got, for instance, the sun at a particular degree, and finding out what happened to them all when, and collecting their stories. We're story gatherers. We could do good research on that, I think. There's not enough of that been published.
Yes,
so
there's a tremendous amount of information.
Yeah, we do it all the time. We do empirical research all the time with our clients, but we don't combine it and we don't put it in a scientific.
Publish it, exactly.
We don't publish it in a good way. We're not good at that yet, because
Yeah.
we think, we don't want to. Then, we lose. We try and we've had this constant ongoing with science, whether we should fit in as a science or a, whatever. And we're not. We doesn't mean we can't be scientific, but we're not Saturnian science. We do something else. We do partly interpretation, which you can never read as a quantitative science, I don't think. But that's just my view.
Yes.
But you can do a lot of other things that are still scientific,
Yeah. Well,
and that's what I like about Sheldrake. That's what I like about him. He's investigating things like telepathy, which other scientists don't want to go there. It's too hard. So, he's a good role model for me that way, I think.
Yeah. Well, you take a start and then it develops, but you've got to start, and then it can evolve. Just exactly how you do it in that particular field of research.
Mm-hmm. But we've got to do professional, when what we shouldn't do, I think, is when there's there's a lot of bullying now online. If you publish something, you get a lot of trolling and a lot of online. And what we shouldn't do is react to that unprofessionally, I think, and because I think sometimes it's a gut reaction to say, well, whatever, we just know whatever, and I think that's not helpful. I think we have to react professionally, like Deb Holding did with the BBC. So there was a really professional reaction with the BBC. So we're starting to take on things that aren't fair, and I think that's good.
Yes. Well, I agree. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir with you and talking with you, because, I don't give things my energy. I frame it in a way, how is this helping me? And I just don't go to the old egoic, where I'm going to get into any muddy water, so that I pull my own energy down, in dealing with something. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think there's two things. We need people who are like Aries type people to stick up for us when there's something not fair. And there's something else about, we shouldn't react negatively, but we've taken it lying down for a long time as well, I think. So there's something about being proud of what we do and saying, no, we don't accept it anymore. I think we're starting.
And it needs to be done in a certain way.
Yes, that's right. It needs to be professional.
So that it's strong and empowered, it's professional. I agree with you, but it's got to be done in the right way, so it doesn't come from a place of, because Aries can be very reactive. I mean, there's there's a positive side to that Aries energy. So if you could stay on the positive leadership, where you're willing to stand out, be an individual.
I mean a really positive Aries as well. We need, what we don't need is just to lie down and say, oh, well, everybody says that, and not do anything. That's the other side of that.
So let's get, I know that when we met and we're talking, you were talking about this particular system that you use for seeing patterns and cycles in business using astrology. How does that work? Could you share something of that with us, and how, people could maybe use that for themselves?
One of the things I use for people and for companies and for countries actually as well, is it's something that a Swiss astrologer invented. And it's a 72-year cycle, and it treats the horoscope like a clock. So it's you have to use a certain house system. You have to use cock houses, and it's like a timing mechanism that you go around and it's 6 years in each house. So, for instance, I'm trying to think of an example. If you like, for the US chart, I'll give you an example for the US chart. So if the US chart, the one I use, the one that quite a few people seem to use, is the one with Sagittarius rising. And there's various schools of thought on that, but taking that one, this is the reason that I use this one. is that if you use that chart and you use the system, then you've got the Pluto in the second house, right? So the second house in the system goes from age 6 to age 12, and then it goes round again after 72. So every 72 years that will repeat the second house. So it's got a 72-year cycle, 6 years in each house. And Pluto in the second house is going to get triggered between age 6 and 12, and then 72 years later, and 72 years later, and 72 years later. So if you use that system and you look at just when Pluto was triggered, it's actually at 9/11. So Pluto, money, in the second house of money and finances, it's right on Pluto just about to the day of 9/11. So that's Pluto getting triggered. Now, if you take that back 72 years, it's 1929. It's the financial crisis of Wall Street. You know, if you take it halfway around the cycle, it's Vietnam. So it's all. So you can see, you can look at that for cycles of when the planet gets triggered. But you also have there's also a certain biological cycle in companies as well. So, you know, in 6-year phases, it's a phase. So my dissertation was actually about that in companies. The study I did with KLM was looking at what they did every 6 years and did it fit an astrological model, which it amazingly did more than I thought it would. So does that make sense?
So what was that? Yes. Oh, I followed you completely. So what is the 72-year, what, you know?
It's the Huber. His name is Bruno Huber. He was a Swiss astrologer, and it's called The Age Point. The Age Progression in the Horoscope is the book. And Bruno actually said it only works for people because it's psychological development, but it doesn't. I don't agree with that. It definitely works for companies, and it definitely works for countries as well. So it's like you can give advice based on how old something is. For instance, you know, so if you know how old somebody is, you know which phase they're in. So if you take 6 years in each cycle, then if you're 36 to 42 is in the Libra phase. It's the 7th house, so it's the Libra phase. 42 to 48 is the Scorpio phase. 48 to 54 is Sagittarius. So if you know how old someone is, you can give them advice about what they should be. It's like a kind of biological clock, but it works for companies as well. So it's very interesting, I noticed, for companies. And there's a kind of crisis point in each house. That's kind of making a longer story short. But so if you know somebody's between 45 or 46, or 51 to 52, or 57 to 58, or 33 to 34, they're the crisis points in different houses, then you kind of know exactly what they might be dealing with. So it's a very interesting cycle, I think. In fact,
those are squares. Sorry? Those are squares?
Yeah, it's just a point that goes around, but the point can do lots of things. So the point can land on it, can be a conjunction with the planet, the point, or it can be a square with the point, or an opposition with the point, or a sextile, whatever. But the ones that really show are the conjunctions and oppositions. In fact, I've just in one of the recent Mountain Astrologers, for astrologers who are listening, there's an article in the forecasting one. I think it was May this year. There's an article I wrote about it, so there's a little bit of information on it.
Oh, fantastic!
And
I didn't see that.
Okay, and in one of the older TMAs, the Mountain Astrologer, I've got one on branding for companies about Apple. I can't remember which one it is. It's a year or so ago, but you could probably find it if you wanted it as well. There's a whole article I wrote about branding, which might be interesting to what I was talking about before. So, but they're both on my astrology site. Both of those articles are on my astrology site, so you can download them from there. That's my Amsterdam School of Astrology site. So it's Amsterdam School, www.asastrology.nl. You can download them on there if you like.
Okay. Well, I'll get you to share that link, and I'll put it up on the video.
Okay.
So people can see that.
Yeah.
We weren't able to get face branding going on Google Hangouts today, so Google on air is going through a few changes, and it was a bit of a interesting adventure. Always is, but anyway. So what are your favorite books? I mean, we talked a little bit about and how much you love Rupert Sheldrake, his work in morphogenic fields, which I love also. But what books are some of your favorite books? Any you'd like to recommend?
I mean, astrology books, or just general books?
Astrology or just general books, you know, as far as philosophy or science or anything, you know, that really you'd recommend. or helping to grow, what's helped you grow your own awareness and
I
develop?
think one of the things I started with, which I still like, is Linda Goodman's Sun Signs. I mean, I think as an astrology book, it's still got some really good information for leading the sun signs. I mean, I think giving insight is for astrologers particularly, but anyway, just knowing, getting deeper into each archetype and knowing the signs is really helpful. It helps you understand other people. In terms of, it'd be difficult to know what. I haven't really got any other favourite books. I mean, I love reading all sorts of books I love scientific books, and I love that we have BBC, of course, over here. So the BBC has some great scientific documentaries on things like quantum physics and multiple universes, and I love all that sort of stuff as well, because it makes me think about how astrology works. I mean, Rupert Sheldrake was interesting. His one on morphic fields was the one that made me realise how astrology might work. So it was when I was writing a paper on Uranus that I used him in one of the papers I did for my masters, and that was a huge aha moment for me when I realised that archetypes could read fields, and that by changing that that was a huge kind of whoa moment for me. Yeah. So he was important in that sense.
Yeah, they're matrices of energy and information that have a certain, identifying mark, like a blueprint or signature of that, and it draws energy, constellates energy. Yeah, so but for me it was like I kind of got how astrology might work, because I've always been fascinated by why does it work. We all know that it works, but how can it possibly work? So yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's more people than I think it doesn't have to work in time and space. Myself, I think that it, I think that you can get outside of time and space and see. I mean, we're not outside of time and space, so I guess it's a big statement to say. But I feel there are other dimensions where the archetypes are at work, I guess is what I'm saying with that.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I've done quite a few weeks at the Monroe Institute, which does other levels of consciousness and things like that. The Monroe Institute in Virginia, I've been to a few times. And I had some amazing insights when I was there. So it's more, I think it's more those kind of things that have been of interest to me, the levels of consciousness and things. And actually doing that and experiencing that myself, I've probably had more impact on me and doing my own work than a particular book or a particular person or a particular hero or whatever. So
yes, I agree with the experience. When you have a direct experience of something, it does really that's the transformative moment.
I think
actually have that direct experience. It's no longer just a cognition or some idea you had about some intellectual understanding, So,
sometimes you just know stuff,
Yeah. Well, I came in knowing stuff, and I think I'm so glad I met astrology because it's helped me understand why. Exactly, it's kind of, it's almost like a lot of things that I do in life are that kind of the cart before the horse.
Yeah, I think we all come in with stuff, but I think some more than others,
So, do you have any closing comments before we end the show? Where can people reach you? We already mentioned, you have FayeCossar.com.
Yeah,
that's one of your websites.
That's more or less my resume. That the FayeCossar.com is more or less about me and what I do. So I do three things really. I do personal work with people on Skype. So. Or in person, obviously, if they're here, but on Skype, if they're, I've got a lot of American clients now on Skype. I do the business work, which is, I have a different website, but you can find that through there, that's Juxtaposition. And then I do a lot of teaching and lecturing and workshops and that sort of thing, which is why I met you in Ashland. I was overdoing lecturing. And that's the site, the site I'll give you for the downloads for astrologers of the different articles. So that's my AMSAM School of Astrology site. So those are the three areas I work in, and I love doing all different things. I wouldn't want to do just one thing, so I would never want to give up working.
I agree with you. I mean, that's, I enjoy doing more than just one thing. I'm one of those people, they tell you to focus on one thing, and I just can't force myself to do that. So,
astrology for me is always in the background, but I love teaching, but I also love working one-on-one with people, because then you can see that you're really making a difference. You know, you can with teaching, but certainly with one-on-one work that I do, the therapy type work coaching work that I do is, you know, I love that. I always do that. And the company work is just great. You know, it's just completely different. So that's always fun as well. I love doing the branding and design because that's really creative. So that's fun too. So yeah.
Wonderful. It's been wonderful having you with us, Faye.
Yeah,
So
it's been lovely talking to you.
Yeah, hanging out and
once we finally got hanging out to work.
Hangouts. So that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Being Aware. Remember to subscribe so you never miss a show and get Feel Powerful free as a gift. Thanks for joining us again, Faye. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
Thanks very much, KG. It was lovely talking to you properly.
Okay, so that's it for today, and it's been a pleasure having you with us. Until next time, relax, enjoy your life, and stay connected.